We asked our Instagram followers who the best new commander from Eldraine was, we've compiled the votes, and here are the top 10 best commanders from Wilds of Eldraine. Holding up the list at number 10 we have Abara, Dreaming Duelist. From the Wilds of Eldraine EDH precon, this flashy flying fairy warrior says whenever another fairy ETBs under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. These decks go one way and one way only. All out fairies. Fairies have been around since Alpha with Scrib Sprites, and whilst that card is green, with over 100 fairies in MTG and around 75% being black, blue or both, this is a deck where you'll have so many options, cutting it down to just 100 cards will be hard. We have plenty of fairy boosting cards, cards that will make token fairies, and plenty of instants galore to keep that fairy army growing. Whilst instant speed isn't key, having fairies to trigger at any time, even on your opponent's turn, will give you more blocking fodder, a bigger army, and more of those ETB drain triggers from Abara. Whilst a good card, it wasn't one I was personally expecting to be in the top 10, but I can see why. Maybe it's time to make this deck and have a fairy tail ending.
You are not funny.
Before we get on to number 9, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe down below for all things MTG. Subscribing is completely free to do, and it helps our channel grow and grow as we head towards 5,000 subscribers. Another way to help support the channel is by signing up to Card Market and using our code gathering-the-magic when signing up. Shout out to Marco220400 for using our code. You'll love to see it. Next on up we have Totem Tans, Swarm Piper. This human warlock bard says whenever it or another non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block. You can pay to make target attacking rat you control gain death touch until end of turn. Surprisingly, for a rat-loving commander, there are a few ways to go with Totem Tans. The first being rat tribal. We want all of the rats to not only trigger Totem Tans, but if any of them die, we're creating even more rats. And of course, those rat colony type cards also play well here with Toti. Another emerging strategy as done by Meme Master Steve is to go aristocrats. Make all of those creatures die to create some rats, those rats can then be sacked again for some more devilishly disgusting hate. Lastly, if you haven't seen, last week we took to some Wilds of Eldraine EDH battling with our boys Chad Magic and Steve taking the helm of Totem Tans, so make sure to give that video a watch after this video if you haven't already.
You better do it now, and you better do it fast!
In as the 8th best Wilds of Eldraine commander we have Belluna Grand Squall. Its adventure says to mill 7 cards, then put all cards that have adventure from among them into your hand. This giant has trample and permanent spells you cast that have an adventure cost 1 less to cast. These Belluna decks go all out adventure. With the release of Wilds of Eldraine we now have over 60 adventure loving cards, and with 3 colours here to play with we have plenty to choose from. Another plus from this new set is that adventure cards are now spread over 2 different colours, which is amazing. If we're using the adventure part of Belluna, we don't want to whiff, so packing in up to 40 adventure cards is key. And of course we have plenty of pro-loving exile cards, so they will all help too. Again, on the recent Chad Magic episode, it was myself that piloted Belluna, so go watch me make some amazing plays. No misplays at all. Honest.
Liar.
For the next best Wilds commander we have Will, Sign of Peace. This vigilant human wizard can tap to make spells you cast this turn that are white and or blue cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn, activating only as a sorcery. Will being a lone commander for the first time, these decks go all out life gain. As we've discussed many a time, life gain is so prominent amongst MTG cards, with them almost certainly being in every set released at least over the last 20 years. So there are millions of ways to spread amongst so many cards that gain us life to trigger Will. And as we can only do this as a sorcery, another key method is those extra turns. Give ourselves more and more turns to trigger Will, use that blue to most likely draw a disgusting amount of cards, get all the value, and tapper and get the win. Will is a great new commander, and I wonder if his twin sister Rowan will make an appearance in this top 10 list too.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Just missing out on the top half we have Immodod, the Pyro Hammer. This human knight says whenever an instant or sorcery spell you control that targets only a single creature deals damage to that creature, Immodod deals that much damage to each opponent. With these Immodod decks, we're going to be burning through those spells. Red spells go hard and we have so many to play here. A potentially great commander, not only are we going to be targeting a creature to deal damage to and potentially remove from the game, then doubling down on the damage and chipping away at each opponent's life total. Also in red we have a load of huge targeting damage cards, some big X spells and some that just deal a dirty amount of damage. Could you imagine dealing 13 damage to a creature, then getting to deal that much damage to each opponent? Lastly, those double or triple damaging spells are made for Immodod, so be sure to whack them in and win a game quicker than you can say, subscribe to Magic the Gathering. Next up we have Elivir of the Wild Court. Another human knight. Whenever Elivir ETBs or attacks, create a virtuous roll token attached to another target creature you control. Whenever an enchanted creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. These decks obviously go all out enchantment. Let's start off with the enchantment loving cards, those that make spells cheaper, get some card draw when they are played, and everything else in between. Then we take that trip to Enchantment City, mainly focusing entirely on those auras. We don't need regular enchantments, but auras to attach onto our creatures so they deal combat damage to a player and we draw cards is key. As we all know, drawing cards means a quicker way to find the key pieces and get that quick win. A strong commander, and one that has a lot of new cards that also sync well with it. This is one that could get popular in the near future. Narrowly missing out on that bronze medal spot, we have Rowan, Scion of War. This menacing human wizard can tap to make spells you cast this turn that are black and or red cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you lost this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. In the opposite end to Will, these decks are all about making sure we lose life, and in those Rakdos colours, that is very possible. We have plenty of cards that we can use to lose us life and get some advantage, some that deal damage to everyone, including us, and cards we have to pay life to cast. It will be entirely impossible to lose a load of life, trigger Rowan and have even cheaper big spells. What we do need on the other end though is a good portion of life gain. Not in abundance, but draining ourselves a lot and then having the threat of our opponents chipping away at us too, not having a way to build that life back up would be the wrong sort of deadly.
Stop hitting yourself! Stop hitting yourself!
For the third best Eldraine commander we have a Layla, Cunning Conqueror. This Flying Fairy Warlock says whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, create a 1/1 Black Fairy Rogue creature token with flying. Whenever one or more fairies you control deal combat damage to a player, go target creature that player controls. Just like fellow EDH Precon Abara, Layla is going to go all out fairies. And as we discussed earlier, fairies within MTG are everywhere, especially in blue. Layla, however, loves those instant speed fairy makers, as she can have a trigger on each opponent's turn to create a naughty fairy rogue. The more fairies we create, the more damage we can do, and the more times we can trigger Layla, go to our whole opponent's board and cruise to victory. Finally, Layla is creating not just fairies, but fairy rogues, so have a couple of those pro rogue cards can really come up key for Layla. I'd say beside Belluna, this may be my favourite of the top 10 list, so to my play group, Flying Fairy Rogues are coming to an MTG evening in the future. In as the second best commander we have Hilda of the Icy Crown. Hilda says whenever you tap an untapped creature an opponent controls, you may pay 1. Whenever you do, either create a 4/4 elemental creature token, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, or scry 2, then draw a card. With a few ways to go with Hilda decks, the resounding way for these decks seems to focus on that all-out tapping. Within Magic there are a ton of cards to help us tap. Rocks that tap, cards that tap things when they ETB, and even a nice new tappy artifact for Hilda to wear on her head. What else do we need here? Of course a load of untappy cards. Tap, trigger Hilda, untap our tappy loving cards, and go again to get double the Ice Queen's triggers. It is early days, but these Hilda decks are already getting a reputation for being disgusting. Control the board with all that tapping, control the game with all of those stacksy cards and cunning counterspells, and your opponents will never stand a chance. Voted as the best Wilds of Eldraine commander, we have Ariat of the Charmed Apple. This human warlock says each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of auras you control. Similar but very different to Elivir, these decks go all out auras. To start with, let's throw in all of those aura loving cards, of which in Magic there are plenty. Then we throw in all of those auras we want to attach specifically to us, those that can boost our creatures, give them flying, first strike and everything else. Then we can throw in all of the naughty auras to attach to our opponent's creatures, ones to essentially frogify them, those that goad those creatures, and everything negative so they can't attack you with Ariat's ability, go elsewhere and cause chaos. As opponents' enchanted creatures can't attack you, those powerful auras can also be effective to attach to your opponent's creatures as well, so long as Ariat stays on the field. So let's aura her up to maximum protection. A great commander, and one rightfully so voted as the best commander from Wilds of Eldraine. There we have it, that is the top 10 best Wild of Eldraine commanders. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe down below for all things MTG. Check out our link tree down below for all of our social media and affiliate links. For now though, I'm all tapped out, so I'll see you in the next video.